Moving
So,
on.
tangents aside, here we
Hello.
are.
I'm here.
Yeah, so,
I got it out of my system.
this, we had a lot to talk about, leading up to this. But none of it's Star Wars related. Actually, some of it was Star Wars related. But, here we are. It has
Mm-hmm.
been well over a month, probably.
Been a hot minute.
Yes. But here we are. We have gone and we have watched Bad Batch, and
It's true.
we are completely unique in doing a Bad Batch themed podcast episode where we review the series, our thoughts on it, what we think, this means for the franchise as a whole, and what we think will happen in the future and what we hope that will happen in the future.
Yes. Yes, correct. Oh, what I hope, and I do
So,
hope, as long as Dave Filoni's around, if you're out there, Dave Filoni, just keep doing you, brother. Please, for all of us.
as long as Disney keeps paying him that much, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. Disney, get on that. Sign that man's next
Listen,
paycheck.
yeah, they will. As long as he keeps bringing them money, they'll keep giving him 1% of that.
1%.
I think that's an overstatement, but anyhow.
I mean, hey, even if it isn't, like, yeah. Anyway, hello.
Yes, hello and welcome to the Star Wars podcast. I am your host, Day, with my co host, Ian.
Hello.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't even know where to start with this. Like, what
Oh
was your
man.
first reaction, your first thoughts on the Bad Batch
Ah.
series?
Okay, so the first time I watched the series, um, I obviously was a tremendous fan. I rewatched a few episodes in preparation of the season finale, and as time went on, I think came to appreciate um, an animated TV show which really was just trying to be itself at the end of the day. But also at the same time, having having seen the continued expansion of a very integral contributor to the Star Wars universe that just kind of fell out of the main story from the movies, the like canon stories, I ate that business up. The all of the like backstory of how Camino ended, like sorry, I should say the program for
Yeah.
the clones ended, and like
Yeah,
how
I guess we never really
Camino.
saw that before.
Oh my gosh, I was so into it, and maybe there was a little part of me that was kind of excited by seeing Cad Bane show up. Like it. My first impression of the first time that I watched it was that it was very clearly a bunch of writers who had been doing the Clone Wars for a long time who just wrote a show about everything everybody wanted from the Clone Wars. And that's what the Bad Batch is. The Bad Batch is just them taking, like, here are the highlights from the Clone Wars that everybody likes. We've got likable people. We got camaraderie. We got cool space stuff. We got a little bit of drama, but not too much drama. Some lighthearted humor. Let's make a show. Make one big show. And then the season finale happened, and these guys came out of left field with one of the most interesting villain style plot developments that I think that they could have. And so obviously spoilers, go watch it now. I'm not going to I'm going to continue talking until I know anybody who's listening has paused and has gone to go watch the final episode if they haven't seen it already. Just to know that you've had all the time in the world. You've been warned. Um, there's a twist at the end where a particular crosshair reveals that he's actually just the way he is. And man,
Okay, hold on.
man,
I'm.
I I was so
mm,
into that. I
I am instantly gonna cut in there.
Please
Um,
tell me what you think.
so I realize. So I realize in I think it's episode. I don't even know. It's 14 episodes long. So like episode 13. The
Yeah,
first half of
yeah.
the final episode. He does reveal. The Crosshair does reveal if you've seen it and you don't fully remember that Hunter that he faces off with the Bad Batch with Clone Force 99, and
No.
Hunter tries to explain to him, saying, "Hey, you've got this chip. The chip is forcing you to think these things." And he goes, "I've had it removed a long time ago." But like I can kind of see that, but what like see that happening? I'm like, okay, I agree. But then like in the second half, there's like one or two instances that make me think he didn't actually get it removed. I think it's just him, as they mentioned, that he's just
Ah,
stubborn and hard headed. So he's
uh-huh.
not gonna admit to his own fault
Okay.
and suck up his pride and be like, okay, you're right, we need to do something about this,
Yeah,
because
that makes sense.
like Omega, I think he's like alone with Omega at one point, and she asks like, "Wait, when did you say you had this?" And he goes, "I don't know, some time ago." Like he's very like dismissive of it, and he's not like
Mhm.
this was like 3 weeks. Like he's not specific. He's like avoiding the issue to that degree. And there's also I don't know. There's like one other moment like right at the end when the Bad Batch kind of go off, and he kind of and they try to like convince him one last time, and it's just something just doesn't strike me right. I don't think he's had it removed, and I think he's too prideful to admit that for some reason.
So that'd be fair. I think that'd be fair. I think that that would be an interesting addition to have in a maybe another season.
Which they've
Um,
already confirmed season two.
yeah, yeah. Just you heard it here first, maybe, folks. Season two. Go eventually watch it. Put it in your calendar. I am of the opinion that he did get it removed, however, and in fact, I think that not only did he get it removed, but that after he got it removed, he saw what the Empire was doing and was Crosshair as himself. He was severe. He was a hardcore dude. He's a little prideful. He definitely thinks of himself as better
That's
than
what it
other
was.
people around him, right? That's like
Yep.
a huge contention point from hit the get-go when he's first introduced is that he has that kind of air of superiority. He fits the textbook villain of the Empire, or so sorry, from within the Empire role so well that I think that they're actually going to have him be uh, just this, that like they have removed his chip and that he has thought about this on his own and seen that this is what he wanted to be anyways. Um, and honestly, similarly, in a speculative capacity to how you have expressed that he likely may not have had the chip removed. Um, I would like to point to a certain Mandalorian episode wherein they had a villain very reminiscent of the speech that Crosshair gave. This villain, this particularly evil, generally guy, we all know him. He was the old guy who is definitely crazy and evil, and he got what he deserved before they blew up the big refinery, just like an old Western should. The, excuse me, the monologue that this guy goes on in The Mandalorian is like so closely related to like, this is how it is. This isn't just for the greater good. We, because we are part of the greater good, are better than the bad guys. And like this conflated logical leap or yeah, leap of logic that these two guys go through in the show, I just oh man, it sounds so dark side to me that like I just I feel like they're going to stick with that. I feel like they're gonna keep because what would torture fans more than knowing that Hunter feels personally responsible for not being able to save his friend and brother's heart at the end of the day. You know, that
Okay.
in a
Okay.
season two,
So
plot ammunition
yeah.
right there.
So I hear you, and I can see that. I'm still not sold, mainly because of something what you said. Because again, as we like my first impression of him when he was in the Clone Wars, and even kind of like at the beginning in the first episode before Order 66, or like kind of like during Order 66, that he has this air like he's better than other people, like he thinks he's better and he knows better than Hunter, but which makes sense, and he kind of like he'll follow the order but he's not happy about it. So why, even after in the season finale, when he says he claims that he's had his chip removed. That he said like one or two times in those episodes, soldiers follow orders. Why is he so like on board with the idea of following orders of people who not only look down upon him but like don't really do anything, don't show off that they're
Mhm.
a soldier and they are deserving of leadership, and he just follows them almost blindly? That doesn't seem like his character at all. And so that's
So
like more
yeah,
ammunition of like why I don't believe that he has had it removed.
for sure. And I'm actually even going to play devil's advocate for my against my own argument here and say that that is actually entirely correct. I think that that is a good observation to make. Um, I think that it doesn't make sense because the Bad Batch's whole spiel has been that they are always on the outside. They were literally made as defects and refined into experimental prototypes to see whether or not
Okay.
somebody could turn the defect into something
So
useful,
big
you know?
spoiler right there.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, okay, well
Hmm.
technically when they're first introduced, we thought that they were just one batch that all
Right.
had defects. We didn't know that they were purposely made this way. And of course they
There,
bring in Echo. And then
y'all had
as
a spoiler warning. You go fucking watch the show.
yes, yeah, I mean, yes, but um just, you know,
Yeah, no, so
poking fun.
an important story development point that I
Yeah.
think also comes up. Um, I
But
think,
well, hold on. So going on that, it's like we
yeah,
learn that they have defects that made this way, and I forgot my point because we went on somewhere else.
word, same.
I was hoping really in that half sentence to get it back, and I didn't.
That's okay. You committed to it though, and that's what matters. The content is still there. I I I have I have a hypothesis, right?
Hit me.
Crosshair. So sorry. Not just Crosshair, but a little bit of everybody. Every one of the Bad Batch has kind of key defining characteristics. It's a staple of a lot of um, character writing when you have something about somebody that like kind of defines who they are, and then you just spin scenarios off of that and then add more character by adding branches of complexity that comes off of that like core. And it's a tried and true method. It's kind of a known thing. Crosshair, I think Crosshair's character is mischaracterized. Because
How so?
I think that in the very beginning, Crosshair is depicted as the severe, focused, and determined one, right? So like his whole jam is that he is the lone wolf of the lone wolves, you know? He is fiercely independent. He is a incredibly cerebral warrior, right? He's cold and calculating. He looks like he's cold and calculating, right? Been visually designed like he's supposed to be. I think that what his actual character definition is is what's the word I'm looking for? Not fatalism, but in like some there's a term for this. I think it may be I'm searching for, and I may be searching for in vain. But like deterministic fatalism, right? Where he is so inflexible that even when he had an inhibitor chip taken out of him, right? Remember, Crosshair was who he was before Order 66. And I think that because the inhibitor chip changes the person that the chip is in, as we've seen, right? It spawns aggravation and or aggression, and it produces like very specific modes of thought that cause people to act ways that they previously would never have even thought of. I think that because of who he was before the chip was activated, and because of a crisis of faith where he realized that the world wasn't nearly as black and white as he thought it was when he was a part of the Bad Batch and the Empire were the good guys, he had the chip removed in order to continue to double down on his character archetype of deterministic fatalism. And I think that that's why he and Hunter always butt heads, because Hunter is a leader and a good one and knows how to compromise, whereas Crosshair is unyielding and refuses to. So when Crosshair was finally presented with an opportunity to have character growth, he couldn't because it literally isn't who he is. My case in point being the antithesis here, Hunter. I think Hunter is a commando and still decided to adopt a little girl. I think that Hunter, despite his enhanced senses, those things that he relies on to be a tracker and a specialist in field ops, I think that Hunter is supposed to be the born leader, right? Like Captain America archetype, where he's supposed to be altruistic with his eyes on not compromising for the safety and security and well-being of the pack. He's the pack alpha. Crosshair, I think, isn't just a bad guy. I think that Crosshair's like little spiel about him being like, I mean, it was the one that you mentioned about, it was just some time ago. I think that's him being truly lawful neutral in Dungeons and Dragons terms. He has a code and will follow it no matter what because that's who he is. He is deterministically fatalistic. And so I think that it's not the chip. I think it's him. And that the chip just exposed a crisis of faith that he dealt away with. The only way that somebody who is an adherent to the dark side can, by sacrifice.
Okay, well you just called him neutral, but
He's okay. Listen,
but
all right.
but okay,
Sidious wasn't technically evil, but let's not get into that.
Sidious wasn't evil. He
Sidious was pretty evil. I'm joking.
fabricated an intergalactic war to overthrow the government or
Right,
the
just so that he
yeah
could be
the
in power.
government, just to be in power. All right. So okay, couple
Yeah,
of
that's my
things.
spiel. That's my hot
Yes.
take.
So I do agree with a lot of your observations when it comes to Crosshair. So like having to be calculating, have to be unyielding, have to be kind of lone wolf and headstrong. That's like all characteristics that kind of make a good sniper, which is kind of a sad thing to say when you think of realistic military terms, but also like in the terms of like personality traits that you want for certain people. It's like Wrecker does well as the brute because he just charges in not knowing better, just does what he's told. He doesn't have to think about anything. He just does the thing. Whereas again, Crosshair is he has to be able to take that shot. He has to be able to calculate range and I don't know
Right.
if wind's a factor, but he has to calculate all these things in the middle of combat and do the thing.
He's
And he
got ice in his
cannot second
veins.
guess himself. So all of that I
Yeah.
agree with. And you almost have me. You almost have me as far as like his crisis of faith. I do kind of
I'm
like
so close,
I do
damn
kind
it.
of I can see his his fatalism,
Yeah,
but like it's just it needs to be shown in the show. If it is not shown,
that's
then
true.
like it's just like fan theory where I'm like, there's
Yeah,
some
that's true.
evidence pointing to this, but like, can I really buy into it? So, I mean, if they show
Yeah.
that in season two, then I'll be like, wow, Ian was right. Congrats. Buy you a cake, whatever, a slice of cake. Um, but like on the flip side of that, you talked about Hunter being the natural born leader. He adopted Omega, and he hold on. First off, hold on. First off,
Uh-huh.
Crosshair, the lone wolf, felt betrayed. He was part of that family, and when he was kind of left behind in his terms, I think that's a little closer to like what we've seen of his crisis of faith. Was that like blood is not as strong as he thought. I think that's as far as we're shown is a little more probably in line of like that crisis of faith. But of course, if they show that like everything that you just said, then we'll go off that. But like I think that's a little more in line with like what his character development was, kind of behind the scenes, and we see a little bit obviously in the season finale of
Yeah.
he felt utterly betrayed and he even tried to save the Bad Batch when they were surrounded. He shot his comrades and was like, "I'm giving you one last chance. Join me, or I will hunt you down." But whatever. Going back to what
What
I
a
was about to
Sith.
say,
What a
Hunter.
Sith. Oh, I love this man. I love Crosshair. Keep going. I'm
But
sorry.
Sid, okay,
Just had to gush.
whatever. Okay, but uh, but what I was gonna say about Hunter is like being natural born leader, adopting Omega. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about this episode and what I want to talk about, and I was thinking about Hunter, and like nothing, like something never struck right with me with Hunter, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I think it's because he is, as you described, the the perfect human being, Obi-Wan Kenobi, in the past episode.
Uh-huh.
You referred to him as a golden retriever, where he just does good, people like him, he doesn't really have any flaws, and so when something goes wrong, he's just kind of sad about it, and everyone's sad with him. And in my opinion, Hunter is more of a golden retriever than Kenobi is. Because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, Wrecker, what's his flaw? He's kind of dumb. He's kind of dumb. He doesn't really have any tact. Like he definitely doesn't have any like social skills as far as like subtlety or anything. You think of Tech, who also has that, but also is like on the smart side, like the brain versus the brawn. They both have the same kind of flaw, but on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
You look at Crosshair. You look, you even look at freaking Omega, or not Omega. Sorry, Echo, who wasn't even part of the original Bad Batch. And you look at Hunter, and I'm sitting there like, what's Hunter's flaw? And I have thought about this, and I cannot come with an answer.
Dang. You know what? That's a good point.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. Like, I think you could try hot take number two for the night, right? Are you here? Are you out here, Hunter fans? Out there, all of you who like the Bad Batch and are ready to watch me drop a diss track on Hunter? What is this guy's flaw? Like, you could try to find things that he's
Here,
done that have endangered his crew and contradicted his own value system, right? You could try to justify certain ways he's handled situations rather undiplomatically, even though he traditionally handles things diplomatically first, as we've come to see in the Bad Batch. I just, he really hasn't been given a whole lot of time to do anything bad. And it's an interesting thing you point that out because that is a near integral component of um the Cub and Wolf or Wolf and Cub, whatever that archetype is called. The Wolf and Cub archetype, where it's like big, strong, masculine, grizzled man who takes in the lonely child who's scrappy and then becomes the father figure. You know, like that's because at
okay.
the end of the day, you get that like they feel a lot of emotional turmoil and they're a little gruff and they look scary on the outside, but really on the inside they've got a heart of gold. It's like a Western story archetype. You're not wrong, dude. I think that I accept this counter post or this repost, this counter blow.
At least,
Hunter
at least
is a
now.
golden retriever.
At least as of now.
As of now.
Okay, like there's still a lot to they're gonna make a second season, and like I want to talk about kind of what they did with the first season and what I think they're gonna do with the second season, and one of which is I think they're gonna get a little more personal with the characters, and I think that'll leave a lot of interpretation or at least room for that to occur.
Yeah,
But
sure.
like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking like, what is his strengths? What is his weaknesses? He's got heightened senses. What does that mean? Like what does he bring? He's a leader. Okay, well other people can be leaders. Like what's unique about him? What's special? What's his defect? What's his flaw? And I'm just sitting there and I'm like he's a clone. He's Rex, but not he's Commander Rex. He's Commander Cody. He's a
Yeah.
reg that isn't a reg. And that's just like
Huh.
that's the conclusion I've come to and I'm like
Right.
okay,
Yeah. I can
okay,
I can
like
I can see
I
that.
can live with
I wonder if that is a consequence of the writing team wanting to make the first season of The Bad Batch so centrally focused around Hunter as like a driving plot motivator. Like I
I
wonder if that I wonder if like it wasn't a deliberate choice to make him effectively this kind of a character, but it was just sort of an emergent one, like just as a necessity where they're like, nah, this doesn't feel quite right. Oh, this doesn't feel quite right. And then they finally landed on Cody, like you said.
so I'm gonna actually argue a little bit about that. I don't like I what how Bad Batch season 1 contributes to the franchise overall, and specifically what they did to season one, almost nothing about season one was actually about Bad Batch. And I'm a little annoyed by that. Because when you look
True.
at this season as a whole, you think about what's the character development. Like you look at the arc, okay? You look at the arc of Order 66. They kind of kick off on their own. They've got, their fallen brother Crosshair. They have a showdown with him. That's all like maybe 2 or 3 episodes worth of like a series intro of like, okay, here's the premise, moving on. The rest of this is filler and is meant to just basically be cameos for it's not about Bad Batch, it's about the rest of the extended universe. Because we
Yeah.
see, as you said, we see the actual fall and transition from the Republic over to the Empire, which is something that I've wanted to see for a long time. We see
Yes.
that. We see how it affects the clones. We see how what happens to Camino and why there aren't clones anymore. And then we see what I've got a list here of 7, 8 cameos of characters who exist in other Star Wars media. We've got Caleb Doom and we've got Hera and Chopper, three of the 6 main characters from Star Wars Rebels. We see them as kids or at least younger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even like subtle. Episode 1 starts with it, okay? Episode 1 starts with Caleb Doom. Like, I'm like, okay, that's cheeky. I kind of like that. Moving on. And then there's 8 more of these throughout the entire season 1. Like, they almost had a cameo an episode. And that's like something that I'm just like, okay, well, this is no longer about Bad Batch. This is about every other character who's not a main character. But anyway, so you see
I
Caleb Doom, you see
Yeah.
Hera Chopper, sorry to cut you off. We see
No, no,
Fennec
totally.
Shand, who, rose to popularity in Mandalorian, and we just keep seeing her in and out of different media because she's such like a fan favorite. We see, oh guys, it's Trace and Rafa. I can't read my own handwriting. We see the sisters who were at the end of season 7 of Clone Wars, who, you know, it's like the first half that we see with Ahsoka Tano. They're the sisters whose parents were accidentally killed by a Jedi action, pretty much, and they, you know, basically grew up to kind of hate the Jedi. We see them just kind of living their life after they're running with Ahsoka Tano. We see Grand Moff Tarkin just kind of like rising to power in the newly formed Empire. We see Rex and kind of what he's doing, but not really. He's just kind of existing in there. And then, of course, you see, Cad Bane.
Yeah.
And just like this entire series, when you boil down to it, this entire first season, when you boil down to it, is just about Star Wars and not about characters of Star Wars.
I am just I whatever it is that you have going for you this fine evening, you are selling me 100% because I think that you are once again absolutely correct and even said effectively the same thing as a reason why I liked the first time that I watched through the Bad Batch as we started this episode. I think that it is okay to look at it and be like, yeah, but I wanted to see more about the actual characters that the show is like named after. Uh, but I am definitely that person who is like, man, there's so much extra Star Wars to this. I'm pretty okay with that. You
Yeah, well,
know?
no, no, no. Okay, like none of this should be taken as I'm not okay with it. I'm okay with it. I enjoyed quite a lot of this, but don't name the show Bad Batch. You know,
And what were they
I don't know what they're gonna
at the
name
end of
it.
the day, it was the end of the day, it was about the Bad Batch, you know?
I,
At the end of the day,
yeah,
they just
okay,
happened to see
okay.
everything else that was going on, which is what I was watching for, kind of. And also
I mean,
because
yeah.
I think Crosshair is a really good villain, and I like that.
Okay, really quick. I need to ask. So,
Uh,
Crosshair,
yeah.
Sniper, is that a birthmark or a scar
Oh
on his
man,
right eye?
you
And
know.
if it's a
Oh, go ahead.
scar, why?
Right. I 100% guarantee you that it is either a scar or a tattoo, And
I
I
think
think
it.
that it is either one of those because somebody sat down after being given instructions on how to do the like concept art for this guy, and they did that, and everybody was like, that's cool, we're gonna do it, and like that was the end of the thought process.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that
Hold
this was
on.
100% a production reason
I
why he has that thing.
So I fully agree with you in that regard, but as a writer, I sit there and think, okay, characters have to do something because they have motivation to do it. So for instance, and that has to do with their character design. And Hunter is exactly the same fucking way with his skull
Yeah,
tattoo on his face.
he's literally Rambo, dude.
Why
Like,
he is
because
Rambo?
because he's literally Rambo. That's his
Why?
whole.
Like you can't just do
Because
something
cool.
like you can't just do something where I'm like this looks cool. Like especially something as like a scar of a crosshair on a character's face. He has to have gotten that somehow. How did he get that? Did he give it to himself? Did someone give it to him? Does it just exist and there's no reason? Like it's just it's like you kind of
Dude, have you watched any of the Fast and the Furious movies? Not to just call out all those fine folks, but like, there's
listen.
nothing about those movies that is at all anything about cars going fast, doing cool things. Like,
Listen. Oh,
Crosshair have his weird
I will no no,
sniper scope
I will go
tattoo.
into a whole rant on the Fast and the Furious franchise,
That's all
but
I'm
let's
saying
not.
is when you walk into a grocery store and you're looking for a bag of chips and you want that tasty bag of chips, you're not gonna go get broccoli. You're gonna get those chips. Crosshair's just a badass dude. He's just a badass. That's just who he is.
Okay.
I doubt. I
Okay.
mean, would you believe it if they said it was a birthmark? Right? Like if they were
I
like, oh, the
just
lore reason was that it's a birthmark.
oh,
Nah, that'd
I
be kind of eh.
I don't
How
know.
convenient,
I
you
really
know.
don't know. Well, like again, the other half of that Hunter. Why does he have half a skull tattoo on his face?
Because he's so bad. He's a
He is
big, strong
half
man.
of death incarnate.
A little bit. Except for when he does basically none of the killing and only all of the saving and being a father.
Yeah, like he's got. Well, I guess that makes sense. That's actually something that I've really commended the Star Wars franchise, especially like George Lucas, in taking the direction that he took with Star Wars and to make it a
Hmm.
little more kid friendly and actually have like more action. Was that obviously uh, technological hindrances in the original trilogy obviously couldn't make the separatist army be the bad guys. So when you really compare the action of what's happening there, like you don't see a lot of like death and killing as much as you do like in episodes 1, 2, and 3 where they're robots. You can do what the fuck you want to robots. You have a Jedi stab them, cut them in half, like use the
Yeah.
Force to like crumple them up and throw them. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Plus, like 30 years of technology of like movie making technology to like
Yeah.
make it better. So like you look at Hunter and like he has a knife. Okay, he's this big bad. He's got this knife. He goes, he stabs things, he cuts through things. What's he supposed to use the knife on now? He doesn't really have a gun. He sometimes has a gun, but they always have it on stun when they're fighting other people. But like his trademark weapon is a knife, and he has it, and he's seen using it, or he's seen wielding it, but he's never like really seen using it because he's facing live targets now. And you can't use a knife against a live target, any kid show, and call them the good guy. So unfortunately, like, the more I watch this, like I watched when I saw them introduced, and I think they had like a one or two reoccurring episodes in the Clone Wars. I'm like, okay, they're unique characters. They're kind of reoccurring. They come and go. I'm okay with that. And then when I heard they were having a show, I'm like, okay, I guess they're fan favorites, but I'm not like super excited about it. And again, just like the more I kind of like pick apart and kind of uh, examine this series, the less it makes sense. And I know it boils down to this one thing, and I know you're gonna try to beat me to it.
Sure.
I get that it's just a cash grab, and it's not a bad cash grab, but it's a cash grab nonetheless. And I'm sometimes I have a hard time wrapping my head around that.
So am I detecting that you were less excited by the show than I was?
Excited leading up to it, like before episode one, like I wasn't very excited about it. I'm like, cool, Star Wars, I'll watch it. Like, it looks like okay, it's like the spiritual successor to the Clone Wars, which kind of is. I'm like, okay, I'll watch it. I enjoyed it when I was watching it.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. I watched season two. That's
Hmm.
about it.
Hmm.
Like this isn't
Interesting.
this isn't Clone Wars when you see like Kenobi and you see Skywalker and you see Ahsoka Tano and you learn about the war and you learn about the Force and it's just fan favorite characters. They're doing their thing. It's not even like a super important mission. Like it's a very episodic. They're just kind of living out their life, and it's not even like they're. It doesn't even feel like they're on the run, like refugee clones trying to make their way. They're just hired muscle to basically like a small time crime lord who runs like a bar and a gambling ring. It's about it, and
Yeah.
all that's fine, but that's not stuff I get excited over.
Hmm. Hmm.
How do
Do
you
you know who
feel
does
about
get
everything I just
do,
said?
do you know who does get excited about all of it?
I want to guess my
About all this
co-host.
stuff you just described? Do you know who does get excited? Dave Filoni. So,
Okay.
yeah, you're
Oh
gonna
boy.
have to get used to Filoni running this show for a little bit, man, because I don't think you're gonna get anything more substantial. This man's coming out with a three-course dessert for dinner, and that's all he's interested in serving. There's not gonna be any fine wine. There's gonna be no well cooked steak. This he's got souffled bananas. He's got ice cream, and that's literally just a bowl of sugar over there, man. Like this all I'm saying, I'm in it for the ride. I'm not gonna tell you that you're
Okay.
wrong for like your criticisms of wanting finer media from your content,
Yeah.
but
But
I feel like their brand is a
okay.
little less fine media and a more of a bag of potato chips, if you catch my drift.
Okay. But so I get all that, but I'm like I know not much about Dave Filoni, and according to Wikipedia, I expect a little more from him. Because like he's worked on a lot of stuff as like either a storyboard artist or a assistant director of like King of the Hill, Kim Possible, Avatar: The Last Airbender, like all pretty good animated shows, and they've got pretty good direction. They've got pretty good story. They can be formulaic, but like they're still like really good. And he's worked on Star Wars: The Clone Wars. He worked on Star Wars. He was an executive producer and creator for Star Wars Rebels for all four seasons. And there's some good things there. And hell, even was he on? Yeah, he worked on Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian is fantastic. The
Mm-hmm.
Mandalorian's amazing because it didn't bring in these characters that are like labeled as super important and they don't do anything important. He like Mandalorian. That why I like it so much. Why I think it did very well is because like they brought in a new character, and so they can have whatever the fuck story they want with him because he's not labeled as important. He's just labeled as a character. He's important to this series, but not to the franchise, not to the whole story, overarching story of Star Wars. And then when they started introducing Baby Yoda and the implications of the Force and tying in other characters, like it makes sense that he's got a fucking a Yoda. I don't know the name of the race, but he's got a Yoda.
Yeah.
Clearly Force sensitive. Of course, he's gonna have run-ins with other characters like Ahsoka Tano and Luke Skywalker. That makes sense, and it's like they're taking like a small story and they're just adding to it. Bad Batch feels like they took part of a large story and shrunk it.
How much of
And
that do you think is because of them only having 12 episodes?
so I actually did look it up. It's 16 episodes.
Sorry, you know what I meant. I was borrowing from your statistics because I am
Yeah.
entertaining a pair of very rambunctious felines at the minute.
Yeah.
How much do you think? Because 16 episodes, I think, as we've seen in modern um, online published series is, 16 episodes is actually not trivial. A lot of like one-off shows that are owned
Well,
by the agency also streaming them, or I shouldn't say agency, the company it's also streaming them. Um, hit 12. They're like maybe 14 episodes long. You never really
hmm
see a show go all the way to like the old school 24 episodes like it used to, or
yeah,
25 episodes like it used to
yeah.
be. So like, would you feel I imagine you would still have the same criticism, but had there been a few more episodes and it hadn't been 16 episodes long, do you think that that would have contributed to assuaging some of that
Well,
observation?
something to take into consideration. It's not just 16 episodes. It's really closer to like 19 or 18
Hmm.
because you look at episode one, which is 74 minutes long. That's three times longer than the other episodes.
Yeah, well, so was the
So
first episode of Loki. Loki was like a fucking movie, and that shit was still super fast.
I don't. Nope. Nope. This is Star Wars. This is not Marvel. This is Star
I'm
Wars. This is not
just gonna
Marvel.
keep poking the buttons until eventually it
You
blows up.
you're finding. I'm convincing you of things, and you're just finding the buttons. Like, why
It's
is this episode?
it's literally my job. My job is to do that.
Kenobi's a
Nah,
gold
yeah,
retriever.
like
All right.
got him. No, yeah, but
Um.
still, like I think some part of it may have been due to like a literal lack of
I mean,
um, space on the canvas, right? Like if
so
there had been 24 episodes, maybe they would have had more time to fit that in. Would you think that actually would have resolved anything, or do you think it was like a foundational issue with the way that it was written?
it's a little bit of a foundational issue, but honestly, I think I might have enjoyed it more if they made it 10 episodes. I originally thought it was going to be 10 episodes,
Mhm.
just based on the story and like watching it as it was coming out, but of course it went past that because it just felt like there's so much filler. If it was a quick 10 episode like trial series to be like, okay, here's the direction we want to take this, is it going to, pull well, pretty much. And
Yeah,
they condensed a lot of the filler and they condensed a lot of like the cameos they kept shoving in, and they actually made it about the Bad Batch, about Omega, and about Crosshair. And even if they didn't dive too deep, if they had the main story arc in less episodes, I'd have been like, okay, this show has a little potential. This show has potential. So season two, they just drag that out, maybe closer to that 15 to 20 episode range, but they actually kind of start digging into these characters. I would think I would enjoy this and be a little less critical of it, but you have to judge it on what you're given. And this is what I was given, and this is how I reacted to it, this is how I feel about it, and this is how I'm judging it.
right. Yeah, that's fair. I have also shared similar criticisms of media that I've consumed in the past. Um, and I think you make actually that even circles back around to the point that you made earlier about uh, not wanting to give credit to a potential plot device that wasn't actually canonically developed. Because at the end of the day, the material we're given to make these judgments calls on that we are critical of based on our opinions about how we like our media, it's all entirely subject to the content that is there. And that is why I asked, just a prompt, just like the potential
Yeah,
exploration
yeah.
of whether or not, like, oh, okay, had they been given more time to do as you would have felt necessary, would it have made anything better? Or could they have just cut out some of the extra filler and been like, here's more of these guys? You know,
Yeah, I
that's
don't
the
know.
crux of the
I
issue
think
here.
I yeah, I don't know. I think the crux of the issue is they built up a series to be about six characters as I'm counting, I think. Like six main characters, but over half of the series wasn't like them being a part of it was inconsequential. They could have had any character in the Ryloth episodes when we met Hera and Chopper, and you actually see like for the first time you see a Republic system, I guess is what they call them, planet, transfer over from the Republic to the Empire, and they're not okay with that. Like you see that, and I thought that was really cool. There was no reason. There's no reason why the Bad Batch was there and what they did. Of course they forced them in to be like, oh, there needs to be a rescue mission because Crosshair's here, and it's inconsequential when you boil it down. The story of Ryloth did not change because the Bad Batch were there,
Sure.
and I'm like, okay, great. Like I kind of enjoyed that episode. I enjoyed some of the devices and and the narrative branches that they're exploring. But I would have enjoyed it much more if they made a 10 episode Bad Batch and then they made like a 10 episode like anthology, like after the war anthology. I don't even know what to call it. Like the collapse, the rise,
Hmm.
the empire. Like they could have like any one of those like names could have just been like an anthology of seeing just seeing where Cad Bane goes off to, which I think technically that was his canonic death, if I'm not mistaken. I think I looked it up. But Fennec Shand killing him and or pushing him off the ledge or whatever it was in the episode when he's trying to hunt down Omega and capture her. I think that's his canonic death, but I could be wrong. But it's just again is these things that are I don't think shows do enough anthologies to but because they shove it into other like side series and I don't enjoy that they're forced together. I don't think they mix well. But on the flip
I
side, sorry, on
Yeah.
the finishing this up, on
Go
the
ahead.
flip side, either separating them out and making them shorter, or making it that 20 episode in those 4 episodes, sprinkled in between the filler, add more character development, show more Crosshair, not being just the bad guy, but being the betrayed brother who turned into the bad guy. Like show a little bit more character, a little bit more uh like character focused episodes where it does revolve around them. It is important that they're there and that they're doing these things. It just felt like we didn't get enough of those for me to like think about, oh, there should be a series named after this. It's like we got like 4 episodes out of 16 that was really about the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I think, like were I to reference testing my own stance on feeling that the show was setting out to accomplish the goal of being a bag of chips, and then succeeding in doing so. I think that like were I to test my own assumptions against how I like other shows, um, I definitely feel that there were some opportunities to have more characterization. I know that this is something that I'm borrowing from the internet, but I think it's a valid point, and I share the opinion of uh, this internet opinion. We didn't really see a lot of uh, Crosshair as a potential antagonist, and for the longest part of the series, and ultimately why I felt his um, twist at the very end, the season finale, was so good, was because we didn't really get to see a whole lot of why he was doing what he was doing. He was just sort of a bad guy pursuing the good guys, and it was weird. And similarly, like we got to see plenty of Omega, and that was cool. But Tech was just kind of around and periodically threw some techno babble out into the world, and Echo occasionally was around and threw some techno babble out into the world, and that was like the extent of our interaction with those people. Um, I know if you wanted to argue that like they're clones, they don't have like a whole lot of a developed personality. You could try to find as much as you want to like explain away the story that was outside of the context of what the story has canonically presented us. But, some of it did feel a little shallow. Um, and I think that for a show that's geared more toward a younger audience, that can be okay. But in how the show was marketed, I think is the crux of where I begin to really agree with you. While I still really liked the show, um, and had fewer issues with it, I think the show was advertised as the Bad Batch. It was supposed to be the story of these weird one-off characters that showed up in the Clone Wars that were really cool and had like a really compelling concept, and that it was supposed to be an exploration of those people. Um, and it wasn't, right? Like it was supposed to be a mini series based around these characters, and it just ended up being these people floating around in their big trashy space van while they got to see the universe transition from one regime to another.
Yeah.
And then periodically they had cameos in their own show. Um, I wasn't as bothered for a lot of the aforementioned reasons why I feel like I really liked the show. But I'm not going to disagree with the idea that there was there was some space they could have filled. There was some shallowness that I think could have been filled to have made it a more interesting palette. While I'm confusing all of my food metaphors.
So, okay, I guess I agree with all of that, and like I of course don't have some of that sentiment because I whenever I hear about like a new series that I'm like really interested in, I don't watch trailers, I don't look into it, I don't do anything, so I want to enjoy it for what it is. And so
Right,
of
you're a
course I didn't.
purist.
I guess there's a term for that. I don't know. I don't really, whatever. I just like I'm like okay, Bad Batch. It's Star Wars. I'm gonna watch it. Like there's nothing about a show that's gonna make me want to watch it. It's just gonna bring me disappointment, and so whatever. And I don't know. So I do, but like I do want to dive into more of the characters, like individual characters, and talk about them, and kind of their roles. But something I thought of, or that occurred to me, or it could be like an interesting thing that they actually introduce and explore later on, is that are they actually Jango Fett clones? Because
Oh.
because they don't look like him and they don't act like him. And they were born in a secret lab way off the coast where no one knew about it except Omega.
That's true.
And I just like
Interesting.
it just seemed really interesting because like I always thought because I always try to sit here. It was also one of those things where like I wondered if they were voiced by the same actor, who played Django, who's now playing Boba, who played all the clones. I was wondering if they were voiced by him, but he was just like a really good voice actor and able to change it. And I never actually looked into and found the answer to that. And then as you were talking, I'm kind of sitting here looking at a picture of them. I'm like the more and more that I'm looking at them, I'm like the less and less I'm like, oh, they don't look like actual clones. And there was something you said that kind of triggered that, and I'm like, well,
Mm.
that could be a very interesting thing in season two.
Wouldn't that be? That'd be a twist.
Like that's why they're so experimental. That's why they're so different, and they look different, and they sound different. Is because there aren't actually clones. Well, I guess at this time they weren't worried about having like source material. Like they still had Django. At the very least, they had Omega as the source material for that like genetic code.
Yeah.
But like, why? It's never really explained. Why was it only this one bounty hunter that was the main clone guy? You know. And
That
so the more I thought about it, the more I'm sitting here thinking like this would actually be a really cool plot point for them to dive into and for them to discover because Omega might know, but she might like want to hold that to herself because it will shatter their own existence of like their own self identity. Like it's the same thing. Sorry, like not that I've gone through this, not that I've known people who go through this, but it's what I imagine when you're like in your 20s and your parents tell you you're adopted. It's not going to change a lot of things, but it definitely changes how you view yourself and how you view your past.
So I think
So am I going to label this episode is the Bad Batch adopted?
is a yes, and weirdly enough, they were adopted by their daughter Omega. That's that's how it works,
Their aunt
right?
sister person.
They
There's
they
their younger sister who's older than them.
they were raised in a tube by the girl that they raised when they became adults. Just don't think of it. Anyway, so the no,
It's
really.
just
So
oof.
I think to a degree, let's put our hats on. Let's put our tinfoil hats on. To a degree, I agree that that'd be a really interesting premise to explore. To be like, what if the Bad Batch weren't just mistakes, but there was something more. Um, I feel
Yeah.
like I have seen that story done poorly a lot, where you take a core premise of something that's really interesting and really cool, and then they start trying to explain it. And I'm gonna be that guy. I'm super sorry. I know that this show has been off of the air for ages. The old NBC show Heroes did this thing where the first series, or sorry, not
Okay.
series, the first season was about the mystery of mankind developing strange superpowers as like an evolutionary step. And as seasons went on, they just kind of started jumping arbitrary sharks until it wasn't really about that anymore. It was about how many different ways they could find cool powers to stuff into character arcs where you learned about the good guy's secret reveal. Like, to an extent, exploring something is why I watch Star Wars. Exploring the like extended universe, exploring the cool premise of the logistics behind the conversion of, you know, the empire from a
Mm-hmm.
pre-empire state to the state we see it in the original movies, the original 4, 5, and 6 movies, right, with Luke Skywalker and whatnot. But I also think that there's a kind of emergent interaction that occurs with plot development where if something is shrouded in mystery and you can count on that thing being a continual generator of mystery, you have more opportunities to write weird things that happen beyond it, right? Like, for example, at the very beginning, the Bad Batch were a bunch of rejects that were then, you know, trained up to use their being rejects as something special. And they became a special task force during the Clone Wars by using everything that life had kind of given, or, you know, using the bad hand that they'd been given by life. And then we find out that not only was that true, but because the fucking cloners at Genosis are actually really good at their job. They were like, here's some interesting mutations. Let's try to focus on these mutations. And they hinted at a level of mystery that's there and is supposed to grip you so that later they can continue to tease you with that, right? It's like how in episodes 4, 5, and 6, they never told you that the Force was midi-chlorians. It's because
Well,
it's just a thing that mystically permeates the universe and can do crazy,
okay.
wild stuff.
Okay.
So here's some creative ways that it
Okay.
expresses itself. There's a swamp that you see your face in your father's suit for. There's a
Okay.
creepy old frogman who lifts a spaceship out of the swamp too. You know, like you give yourself more creative freedom when you
Okay.
don't explain that kind of
Huh.
stuff. And so I
There.
think that we shouldn't get that answer.
So there.
And I think that they should just in season 2 double down on the thing both of you have already agreed about and actually make season 2 about the characters.
Okay. Hold on. Multiple things. One, Camino, not Geonosia.
Camino,
Geonosia?
you know what I meant.
Geonosis. That's what it's called. It's the
Yeah,
Geonosians.
not
Geonosis.
Camino. Yes.
Yes.
Caminoans.
Two, you're basically just describing the 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 main romance in a sitcom. Will
Yes.
they or won't they? And
Why do you think that is such a why
it,
do you think that that's such a successful formula?
it's successful. It's successful because people's attention spans.
Are you, hold on, now are you observing and criticizing the people, or are you projecting personal taste based on content of the story and not the mechanics through which the story is delivered? Because I
Probably
am
the
going to
second one.
argue that the entire reason Star Wars is interesting is because of this formula used in a way that isn't a rom-com.
Well,
Hot take.
okay. Well, like so, my issue is with like the formula of like the mystery that you hint at and you never get to is that I get bored. Like I want progress to be seen, and so that's why in things in like throwing out a show that just comes to mind, How I Met Your Mother, I can't sit and watch it all because,
Shots fired.
well, I know what the ending's about, so like it's a dumb fucking ending. But two, it's like you have 9 seasons explaining How I Met Your Mother, but in like season 6 or 7, they technically meet, but they don't get together. So they skirt that, and it's still like 2 seasons, 2 or 3 seasons before it gets to the point where they're actually like met each other and dating. Like it's like I just don't. I get bored.
Sure.
I
And
just
right,
I
like
want progress. I want
maybe that's
things to
because they keep
change.
teasing at something that is the content of a story you don't resonate with. Because what
Possibly, yeah.
there's an example. There's an example here that is also coming from a perspective derived from a value system. You and I both love Star Wars, and you and I both really liked how Star Wars opened up sci-fi. That's just those these things are true. I think
Okay.
that it would not have been nearly as interesting if Star Wars had been like episode one, or I guess four with Luke, where it's like, here's the Force, cool, go be a rebel. Episode two, here's the Force, cool, go be a rebel, right? Like you're describing How I Met Your Mother, kind of playing out the plot a little, and not successfully using the formula by writing a specific system that lets that mystery continue to generate new content.
I
Samurai Jack is another great example of, I think, a very similar formula being applied in a very successful way, where they're like, meh, it's a distant future. Spoilers, if you haven't seen Samurai Jack, the latest season reveals this, so haha. He's ageless and can't die of old age because Aku cursed him when he threw him through time, and that was kind of a weird thing. So now he's just stuck wandering through the wasteland forever, trying to get back home. And look at how wild the future is. Woo! And they just do whatever they want, right? Like,
okay. Well, I will actually argue because I think you're applying the formula incorrectly, and I say that because I don't view Star Wars in the original trilogy in the same formula because there's progress. Because at at the end of episode 4, you technically see Luke use the Force. And although it's not expanded upon, it's like, okay, you see the progress of him being like just a farm boy to, basically leading the attack of the rebellion. And that's not like, all things considered, taking everything into scope, it's not the biggest like transition, the biggest progress, but it's something as far as the movie goes. Because at the end of episode 5, he's wielding a lightsaber, he's using the Force, he's standing up against Darth Vader in a 1v1. And that's some progress. It's not complete progress, but it's some progress. And then episode 6 happens, where he beats Vader. He wards off against the Empire's like seductions, and he's become the true like Jedi master. There's progress there, and there's not progress in the formula. If the formula were to be truly applied to Star Wars, it's if we went through episodes 4, 5, and 6, and at the end of 6, we see finally, after 3 freaking movies, we see Luke somewhat use the Force, or like he just magically is like a master of it
so
because of
hang
all
on,
of
hang on. I'd like to interrupt
because
you for a moment because I want to
okay.
make sure that we're just kind of keeping on track. The formula being described is one where a point of mystery facilitates the continuation of the plot in a way that isn't boring, right? In How I Met Your Mother, your criticism was that by season 6, you know how they met, and then there's 3 more seasons. In Star Wars, the example we were using, specifically the one that I was trying to illustrate through Luke, was his mastery of the Force. And I was saying very much similarly to how you are saying now that the formula was a success because the Force was this weird, interesting thing that they didn't explain. And as time went on, eventually, what it became was Luke being able to do even more cool, weird mystery things by being more powerful, and that through his determination and practice and discipline, he not only grew up as a man, he also became a Jedi Knight and saves the galaxy, right? Like the Force was the thing that I was making the observation for, would be a failed example of this formula that I'm describing, the Bad Batch. I don't think should. change from how they've already kind of teased at things if Luke were to only have that breakthrough at the end of the final movie of those three movies. If he were just to kind of continue to be, and that's what I had meant by saying, if in episode one they'd said, here's some force power, cool, this is neat, and now go fight and be a rebel. And then in episode two, they had, or episode five, they had said the same thing. In episode six, they had said the same thing. That is an infective application, which sounds like what you are describing uh,
Eh, kind
is
of.
sorry,
So
it sounds like what you were describing is the same thing that I was describing, wherein the formula of how the Force became an interesting component of the story was that they continued to not really tell you that it was midi-chlorians and that it was totally quantifiable and that there was science behind it and bullshit.
So, so yeah, okay. First off, I want to say this earlier. The midichlorians, like that, I think was just a plot mistake. I think everyone, literally, even George Lucas, probably agrees that it was just a mistake to try to, again, quantify basically a religion, and it didn't hit its mark. And there's a reason why you never hear of midichlorians in their count outside of episode one. Literally never fucking talked about ever again.
True.
So, A. B. So I guess we're I guess we're interpreting the formula wrong, because I view the formula as a binary. Is you spend this entire time, will they, won't they? Because the binary is they're not, and then when they're together they are, and that's the end of the series. But it takes a long time to get there. And so my version of it, as I would assume it's applied to Star Wars, would be Luke's use of the Force. Is that it's a lot of, he doesn't have access to it, and he doesn't have like control over it, and then suddenly at the very end he has full control and full access to it. Like that's my version of like what I think the formula would be applied to Star Wars. So I think we're a little, not in sync there. But I just, whatever, I don't know. Bad Batch. We're back. Bad Batch review. That's what this episode's about.
Hey, look, man, I still agree with you. The core premise being, in your observation, that there could have been a little bit more love to the literal characters the show is named after.
Yes.
Uh, but you
But
know, as I've said before, I'm also still a little forgiving because I don't have as high of expectation. I don't expect it to be like, you
I,
know,
yeah, I unfortunately have a huge expectation over a lot of things. Like I just do. Like when I'm given like media gold, I expect everything to be like some, at least a shade of gold. You can't just look at episodes 4, 5, and 6 and then be like, you just, I don't know. Like you're capable of making good stuff. Just keep doing that, please. And so that's why I don't know. I just have I always have like high expectations of stuff. But anyhow, speaking of formulas, there's a different formula that I kind of want to dive into because it's
uh-huh.
character specific.
Yeah.
Because like, it's character archetypes, and we talked about, or I guess mainly you've talked about, but we've talked about Hunter and Crosshair,
Uh-huh.
about what the roles are in the group and what they kind of contribute, but we haven't really talked about the other four. And so I kind of wanted to dive into that a little bit about like what each character, what they kind of bring to the table as far as the group is. Like I've got my like grievances with some of them, and I kind of want to just straight ask you a few because I just can't think of answers. You know,
Huh.
like I'm gonna go over the two that I kind of know. It's like obviously we talked a little bit about or I talked a little bit about Wrecker and Tech. So
Yeah.
Wrecker, obviously he's the brute. He's the big guy. He carries stuff. He's not the brightest. Um, but you point him at a thing and he goes and punches it. Pretty standard. Nothing special or unique. But he's quick to laugh. Like he gives bear hugs. He's really likable. Just a nice guy. You can't really write him incorrectly. You can't write him incorrectly, but he's also not going to be the star of the show, which I'm perfectly fine with. There has like not every character has to be the star of the show because
Right.
otherwise no one is.
Right.
And then you look at Tech. Okay, Tech's on the kind of the opposite side where he can fight, but he's probably not the best. Although like in the circumstances we see that he is good, but like if he was to go one on one with any other Bad Batch member, then he'd probably lose. just by like combat ability. But he's like really smart. He's really techy. He can calculate these things, and like he's got like this supercomputer for a mind. Which again, like I kind of am just like, okay, he exists. Like you can right him wrong, especially because if you add his flaw to be like that, the social uh, inability, like
Hmm.
he can come off as a dick, and he kind of does at times, but he still has that kind of loyalty to his family. That kind of like, okay, he's forgiven. Like he means well. He just doesn't always say the right thing. And I'm like, okay, fine. Then I look at Echo, and I'm sitting here. And I'm like, okay, in the Clone Wars, it made sense because of unfortunately what happened to him, and now he's like part machine.
Yeah.
Okay, like it would make sense that he's no longer technically a reg. He moves on to the Bad Batch. But what does he actually contribute to the show except being a less annoying tech?
Well, you know, um, I wish I could play devil's advocate and suggest that there's actually some secret great motivation behind what Tech's contributions to the show is in some way. But the Bad Batch, maybe riffing off of our previous observations about the opportunity to develop some of the characters, the Bad Batch doesn't do a whole lot for Echo. Um, and I feel like I don't feel like that's necessarily a bad thing. There's plenty of opportunities, certainly, to find opportunities later in the story to write some interesting stuff for characters. That's whatever, that's just writing. One traditionally synthesizes a archetype in their mind. They get a picture in their head of what an archetype for a person is by observing that person's actions and like seeing trends in motivation or in the output of their decisions or in the way that they react to other people's decisions. And tech, tech has more screen time than Echo does. So like we get that Tech shows up and is like the analytical, maybe not super feeling robotic nerd personality. But Echo like really doesn't have any of those opportunities to interact. Like they've I don't know that he has an archetype because he's kind of devoid of evidence for what his archetype would be.
Yeah, that's
Um,
kind of true.
my,
Well,
my 2 cents is that he is, um, the accepted one, where like he wasn't part of the original pack, but he was rejected by the rest of the pack and found a new home. And because of that, that made him like loyal to a fault. But that's not quite. Yeah, that's just like I'm inferring because of things that didn't happen in the Bad Batch show. That's just his
yeah,
backstory. Like what I am describing is the context for how he got into the Bad Batch. So it's not really the same. Um, I would even go so far as to argue a little bit that Crosshair um and that Tech both kind of suffered from the same issues. We I think predominantly saw Omega, and we saw Hunter, and we saw Wrecker as the main players of like what was going on in the Bad Batch as a gang, um, while the others just kind of went and were around. Like
yeah. I mean, yeah,
there's this doesn't mean that there's not opportunity to expand on it, but they've really not done much for poor little Echo.
they haven't really done him justice, especially because now that I think about it, they also kind of like got rid of some of his like defining traits from the Clone Wars. The whole reason why his name is Echo was because when he was part of, I guess before they were formed as the Domino Squad, when they were in training, he would always like repeat orders, and everyone got really annoyed at him. They called him Echo because he would always echo the orders. I get that with time and with training and with the literal like torture and half cyborgness, conversion that he went through. probably not the same person as he was before, but like he doesn't. He's just a completely different character after, and like I feel like it's really sad to see that like he wasn't my favorite clone, but like he was like someone that I was able to like I knew, like he wasn't CT whatever. He was like, okay, he's Echo. I recognize his character, I recognize his name. I know a little bit about his character. And he lost all defining characteristics. And then he joined the Bad Batch, and then we get to see him in the Bad Batch, and he's not really given any other defining characteristics, and it's kind of sad to see.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I don't even have a I don't have a hot take. I don't have a hot take to contradict that point at all. I think that there's strong characterization in some of the characters of the show, and it just happens to be that predominantly that strong characterization happens with non-Bad Batch related characters.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. But, okay. Well, I've kind of gotten a little bit off the soapbox when it comes to Echo. But, there was a character that was introduced for the first time in the series, as far as we know, or as the franchise, sorry, as far as we know, Omega. And at
Mhm.
first, she's introduced, she's this female that we kind of assume is a clone, then kind of confirms, like, okay, she's a clone. It's the first female clone that we've seen. And we're like, okay, interesting. She must be, like, cool and unique. And she's logistics, she knows strategy very well. She can barter and compromise. Even though she's a kid, she still has like these really defining these soldier like characteristics. And you're like, okay, this is kind of interesting. Like, where are we going with this female clone? Then we later learn that she is basically Boba Fett's sister, like actual sister, where she is a genetically unmodified Boba Fett, somehow female, but sure. Doesn't look anything like Boba Fett, and, you know, doesn't even have the same hair color. And, it's like what it kind of falls into like, okay, like she's a very important character, but like now that the cloning facilities have shut down, and since she doesn't really have her own amazing, unique, like character defining traits, where are they gonna go with this character? Like, what's the point anymore? Like, and my fear is that they're going to somehow make her a character that we know as an adult, but like, is like her origin story, where it's
Mhm.
like, oh, it's her, like holy shit, like oh my god, I didn't know she was related to Boba Fett, and like I don't buy into that kind of writing, so I'm not really. I'm fearful.
That'd be really interesting if they were to. I'm a little hesitant to believe that they might, but
I'm
you
I'm calling. Hold on, wait. I'm calling it right now. She's Mon Mothma. Okay, this is Mon Mothma's origin story.
Can you imagine?
I
Can you
don't
actually
want to.
imagine? Dude, I mean, maybe there's a world where they're like, haha, now you've seen the horrors of real life. Now you have to be a grown up. Baha.
Or she's
And
like Admiral Holdo. She's someone. Like, there's no way that they don't make her like an important character who's really not that important later on, but it's just like, here's her origin story. We got you because you couldn't guess it. But then
it would definitely feel on brand for how tropey the show can be sometimes. I wouldn't, I don't disagree.
Ian, I'm scared.
We'll see, dude. I mean, we still have season two, right?
I'm I'm
There's
sure we've
still a
got like
chance.
at least 5 seasons of this. There's no way they're gonna let it die anytime soon.
I don't know, man. I think we'll at least get a season two out of it. If we get a season three, I'd be surprised.
Well, I don't know. I think. I mean, I think. Well, okay. I'm not gonna judge it too harshly. Like so. Well, I am judging it pretty harshly, but I think season two is gonna be a lot better. It's gonna be a lot have a clear message, have a better idea what they want to do. Because if you, and this is just a thing that happens with TV shows, if you look at season one and then you look at every other season combined, season one is by far the most different because they have to sell you on this idea. Season two and on, you're sold on the idea, and so they can do whatever they want now.
Hmm.
So I
Mhm.
don't fear for season two as much, and I don't think I'm going to judge it or have as many issues as season one because I think now that they've sold it and proven that this can be popular, they're going to be like, okay, we need to let's tone it back and let's focus on what the story we actually want to tell. And I think that they're going to do a better job of that because I think that Disney and as Star Wars as a whole can take things in very interesting directions. They're very solid. You know, they don't produce bad stuff. It might be formulaic, but it's not bad. So I think that we have a bright future ahead of ourselves. But like in the meantime, Omega, like what's the point?
I mean, you, what will be the point is a good question because season one and its launching, the launching of season one, was very much about the Bad Batch and the contention of having to bring the cub into the pack, right? And then eventually she learns to kind of fend for herself a little bit and she becomes one of the pack. And that's cool. They still protect her, but now she feels like she's more one of the pack. Um,
Okay, I agree so far.
right, like season two, that is an interesting question to ask. Because she will have already been part of the pack, they won't really be able to lean as much on that plot device. So maybe you're onto something. Maybe their next season will be better off because due to having used already existing content or premises for content, they'll, as like a forcing function, have to engage with more of the other people and the other potential stories, something a little bit more um, rich, you know? One might argue that The Mandalorian did the exact same thing, where they were like, yep, here's Lone Wolf and here's Cub. And now Cub is part of the pack. Cool. Season 2 ends with a pretty significant story beat for the Mandalorian people. Just putting that
Well,
out there. You know, a bit of a
not even
tonal shift, if you catch my drift.
not even the Mandalorian. It's just like the entire like franchise at that point in time shifted because of one episode. You know, it's like the Mandalorian character. There's the it's not the First Order, but whatever Moff Gideon, his entire
Yeah,
faction. There's
his little detachment.
there's Bo Katan and her faction of Mandalorians, and then there's Luke Skywalker. Like, there's so many things going on. But anywho, you're
Yeah.
saying
No, no, that was it. That was the conclusion
okay.
of the statement was that like we've seen um Dave Filoni produced Star Wars follow a season to season trend of the kind of content that they hit on. I think that there is cadence, or not cadence, sorry, I think there's credence to your supposition. I think there might be something to it. So
Yeah, yeah.
you've watched, I've obviously watched the Bad Batch more than once. How many times have you watched it?
I've only seen it through once, and uh, yeah, and so I watched most of it as it was coming out. So like earlier on in the series, I'm a little fuzzy on the details.
I mean, that's okay. Um, So this started with you asking, and I sigh and forlornly stare off into the distance, right? Because you started off by you asking, like, all right, well, what did you think? And I was like, here's what I thought about my first watch through. Second watch through, um, I want to make, I just want to make a special shout out, right? Like for this specific detail. I don't know if it's just me, but I definitely feel like some of the episodes that were maybe a little more fillery in content I noticed had slightly lower fidelity visuals than certain other episodes. um, you know, I
You mean like less of a budget?
like the lighting and animation and some of the environment set design, like they were just, it was hard for me to not notice. That's maybe like a petty thing to like point out and pick on them for, but like however it is that these guys have been making these shows since the Clone Wars, right? Whatever engine they're using, whatever programs they're using, however they're doing it. I just when I rewatched it and I started noticing how some of the scenes were lit and how they kind of conveniently happened to be the episodes that didn't really do a whole lot for them. I was like, okay, okay, okay. You guys, you got me, huh? But then you watch the season finale and like, man, it the first time I really didn't notice. So I watched the first time through I didn't really notice. When the season finale happened and I had watched all the way through the show, I really noticed. The season finale, the final two episodes, I should say, are very well done. The lighting and
Absolutely.
animation, everything is like way better than the other episodes. And it's just it bugs me on a level that is irrational. I had to bring this up. I wanted to ask in case you had seen it too, because like I said, I watched it through twice, and I was like, "Did you?" I was like, "Did you notice? Did you notice that?" Again, maybe a little
So
bit of I just,
so they got away with it because I you watch it once a week. You don't remember
right.
the subtle
That's true.
details a week ago. And
Right.
that's if you watch it when it comes out. If you like are late a few days, it's even more time. I did notice, however, that the last two episodes were like there's more to it, but that's also because it's like the last two of the series. But also like technically, like I think the last two episodes should have been one because you look at the first episode, and I think the first like they're bookended by like the big budget episodes
Mhm.
of like there's a lot going on. This it's really important, and of course they're gonna make that look the best and feel the best and sound and everything. But specifically, I noticed it specifically at the end of episode 15 when when Tarkin gives the okay to destroy the facility.
Mhm.
And you see the Star Destroyers come down, or I don't know if the Star Destroyers yet, but like the cruisers come down through the clouds to get the target. And there's a brief pause. The music lightens. You don't hear the rain as much, and it just shows still shots of the clone facility. And these are areas you've seen before in multiple medias, and they're still. The whole cloning facility where all like the embryos and the infants and everything was raised, there's nothing going on. There's not a clone in sight. You see the cafeteria, there's no trays, everything's like neat and order. You see like the like the training ground, like there's the it was just such a beautiful like cinematically that they did in that one brief moment of like 3 seconds, and then it hard cuts back. The rain is heavy. The music kicks up, and then the cruisers just start firing and destroying the facility. Like that's
The season
noticeable.
finale was so good.
Yeah, that is
Oh,
noticeable as like the care they put into each episode or into that episode versus others. And I actually
proof.
really wanted if I was directing it, I would have shown those three same shots or those like three or four same shots of the still, but then being destroyed. Like you see three quick glimpses of them like quiet and serene. You see the cruiser start firing down, and you cut back to those scenes being just torn apart by the artillery. I would have loved that duality, but that's just my personal taste.
Yeah. No, really. I just it once again illustrates that like that uh,
So
they just
see, there
it was a
there
bit
is
of a it's
hope.
just I don't know I know every show kind of does this to its own extent, and I apologize, I don't mean to talk over you.
No, you're good.
I definitely like having watched through this. I liked the show, and then when I rewatched it in preparation for the season finale, I saw that like they maybe kind of cut a few corners here and there. I was like, man, what? That's not allowed. Well, they're humans. It actually is allowed. Um, it
Mm-hmm.
is only me that holds them to that standard. But You see one little corner that isn't like lit just the right way, and it's like, no, you guys. It's fine. That's
Yeah.
just the little things you notice as you rewatch the thing.
Yeah,
Um,
but it does show hope. It does show hope that they can do well, and hopefully leading through into season two, at least the beginning. Like, at least bookmark the seasons because you showed it in season one. You can bookmark them with like really or bookend them with like really strong episodes. So
yeah,
just at the bare minimum, continue with that.
right.
But yeah, I mean that's we've been going for a little bit. I wanted to leave one final note before we sign off. And it's something that I thought of a little while ago, and I just want to circle back to it. We're talking about Omega's role and kind of what her future is going to look like. And it's completely up in the air, so it's really hard to make any kind of like actual predictions. We can make formulaic predictions, but nothing that like we don't know where she's going to go because we don't even know if she's going to survive. Because you think someone, well, I guess Boba Fett was already kind of like introduced and brought up, and then it's just his backstory instead of this big reveal.
Right.
But for her, I wonder if it's a big reveal or if she's even going to survive.
Yeah, yeah.
But something had come to mind, and I think it's really interesting. I don't think they're going to do it, but again, if I was in control, I think honestly I'd probably aim for about 4 or 5 seasons. I think that's like as much like story as you're going to get out of these characters, and like as much like uh extended universe that you can kind of shove in between really not even between episodes 3 and 4. It's between episode 3 and uh, Star Wars Rebels, because Star Wars Rebels is the is the uh, is the prequel to Rogue One, which is the prequel to Episode 4.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not much you can show as far as like the early rebellion. Okay, like it's done and
Right.
done.
Right.
But something I thought of, Omega does not have the growth factor.
What?
So it's not like and I thought about this. I thought maybe like oh it'd be really cool in a later season to see her grow up to be like a teenager with the Bad Batch. But the Bad Batch is gonna grow faster than she is. So I would write it and I would make it this way so that she's like maybe she's like what 10 or 12 now. So as she's just hitting about 16, the Bad Batch, like this is like the final season material,
Hmm.
the Bad Batch are like in their 60s. Like they're on their way out. They can't fight anymore, and she either has to take care of them or they pass on due to fighting, due to old age, due to their enhancements kind of like deteriorating them in old age, and she's like kind of left on her own. Like I
That'd be a
don't
lot
know.
more. That'd be an incredibly more complex and substantial twist than I would have expected from them, and I am here for it.
Well, I'm not saying this is season two material. Again, I'm saying
Yeah,
that
I'm just
that
saying.
over the 5 seasons that I've laid out, or the next seasons that I've laid out, season 4 should start hinting at that the Bad Batch is getting older, that Omega should age a little bit, and then season 5 is when it hits you, of
Right.
like, oh, they've actually aged,
Oh,
and
that'd be cool.
they can't do this anymore. I think they have the potential to do it because I think that they're getting more complex in their storytelling. The more the series the franchise that they expand and add to and grow on, they're bringing the complexity. Like it's could you imagine if you just finished like back when you were a kid, you just watched episodes 1, 2 and 3. Could you imagine that the Mandalorian would exist?
No, not even.
Exactly. Like I think that they are honing their craft and that they aren't restricted by George Lucas, who can be a little, in my mind, is a little controlling, which is not a bad thing. He brought us 6 very successful movies that spawned, again, a era and genre defining franchise. But you need to have like outside input and you need to have someone who has good ideas come together with someone else who has really good ideas and bounce them off of each other and to make the best product. And sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. I think Disney has the money and the ability to do so. And it might be a roughy road to get there, but that's all I'm hoping in the end is that we get like the best possible product. Basically, what I'm saying is Disney, hire me and I'll write all this shit for you by myself, please.
If Dave
Let's go.
Filoni even lets you get in there. Are you kidding me? This man probably guards that thing so zealously.
Just give me a meeting with Dave. Just like, Dave, I got an idea. I'm gonna pitch it to you. Here we are.
He's gonna be like, cool, but you're gonna have to yell louder over my piles of money.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know if that's actually how I'm sure he's actually really a cool guy.
Yeah.
Dave Filoni, don't hate me, please.
That's the Jeff Bezos approach. Cool. You got an idea to improve Amazon? I can't hear you in space.
Well, almost space. Let's be clear about that. He didn't
Eh.
quite reach outer space. He's just in the upper atmosphere.
Yeah. All right. Anywho, that is our
So
last
yeah,
tangent of the evening.
that
Please.
that's
It's the
how I
last
feel about
tangent.
the Bad Batch. That's how you feel about the Bad Batch.
Yeah. So here we are. We're a little late. It's been maybe what 2 weeks since it ended.
Mm-hmm.
But we finally got around to it. Our life things have gotten in the way
Yeah,
of
as they
us doing
do.
these episodes, and I
As
hope
they
that
do.
at least my life is a little more stable for the next couple of months. So I hope to,
Yeah, fingers crossed here too. Let's
yeah, to
let's
hopefully
hope that
crank
everything stays
out,
consistent.
yeah, to hopefully crank out a few episodes. Maybe, and Ian, bear with me. We have a backlog of episodes we record. We record like 3 or 4, and so
Yeah.
if life gets in the way, we can still upload like every other week, like we wanted.
See, that's producer talk. You can't, you're not allowed to say stuff
Come on,
like that.
we
What are you
have
talking about?
listen, we have so many ideas of what we want to do
It's
with
a good,
with this. Like again, I still want to, and hopefully we're gonna do it soon. Maybe not the next episode, but I want to go through. I want both of us to watch like episode 1, review it, episode 2, review it, and actually take
yeah.
them like movie by movie. But then also like as time goes on, we start stringing them together of like how they actually come together. And I want to go
It
through
would
all.
be,
I want to go through all
yeah,
9 movies and do that. So that's
it would be
at
hard
least
not to.
9 episodes.
Right. But like, I mean, yes, it would be an endeavor on its own, but by the time that we
Yeah.
got to like the third one, everything, you know, every other episode is going to be reviewed in the context of the previous episode. So like, I can only imagine. I can only imagine that by the time we get to the end of it, we'll be like bleary-eyed and furious, like, why does this exist?
Only because we'll end with the newest trilogy, and you know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with some of your feelings, but that's my tagline. I don't disagree, and then I talk for a billion hours. I'm with
All
you.
right.
I'm with you, and I think it'd be a lovely idea. I'm
Yeah.
excited to do it.
Yeah. Same here. But for now, such ends episode 4. Let us know what you think. Is the Bad Batch adopted? It's really just the only question worth answering this
Same,
entire episode.
but people want to know.
Yes. But yeah, let us know down in the comments what you think about some of our ideas. If you agree, if you disagree, what you hope for in the next coming seasons, and how you think that Bad Batch, what role do you think they're gonna play in the next coming different iterations of Star Wars and the different stories, and you know, because we didn't really even talk about that. Because we talk like we know how like Rex and other clones kind of appear later on, but does the Bad Batch are they going to reappear like in 20 years down the road? Who knows?
Who
But
knows?
until
Until
that
then.
episode, if we're still doing this by then, we're signing off. I am Day. This is Ian. Welcome, not welcome. Thank you for listening to the Star Wars podcast.
Welcome to the start. Now we've got the pre-show
And
over. We
then
can get to it.
yep, that was all the introduction. Now getting into it.
I'll just preamble. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for hosting, my good sir.
Next time is you're hosting. Let's go. You gotta do all this stuff, all the niceties.
Until next time.
Yes, until next time, may the force be with you.